You ever feel that strange silence before something big happens? That stillness that makes the air heavier, like even time's holding its breath. You can sense it, can't you? The shift, the weight of everything that's been chasing you, everything you've been running from, it's all here now. And the funny thing, it doesn't end because the world said so. It ends because you finally decided to stop letting it win, because somewhere between the pain and the prayers, something higher looked down and said, enough. Not because you begged for it, but because you were built for it. Tonight isn't just another night. It's the one the universe marked for your turning point. Endings are divine beginnings in disguise. People fear endings because they think it means failure, loss, emptiness. They see something fall apart and call it over, but they don't realize that's exactly where everything starts to make sense. The world has this cruel way of breaking you before it blesses you. It tears down your comfort, your certainty, your plans, and you sit there wondering why everything you built is crumbling. But maybe it's not punishment. Maybe it's construction. Maybe the ending isn't taking from you. It's making space for something better to arrive. See, endings don't happen by accident. They come with timing so perfect it almost feels planned. Because there's a rhythm to how life moves. What's meant for you stays until it's served its purpose, then it leaves, and when it does, it hurts. You beg for answers, you try to fix it, to hold on, but no matter what you do, it slips through your hands. That's not weakness, that's alignment. The universe doesn't need your permission to move you where you belong, it just waits for the right night, the one where you finally had enough to close one chapter and start the next. People always want to understand the why. Why did they leave? Why did this fail? Why now? But sometimes knowing would ruin the lesson. You're not supposed to understand it while you're standing in it. You're supposed to trust that endings carry messages only time can translate. The pieces don't fit while you're bleeding. They fit when you've healed. That's when you look back and realize every goodbye was leading you somewhere better, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. The beauty of endings is that they force truth out of hiding. They show you what was real and what was just comfort. When something ends, masks fall. You see who cared, who stayed, who pretended. You see yourself too, who you become when things collapse. Do you break or do you rebuild? Do you cling or do you grow? Endings strip away illusions until only truth is left standing. That's why they hurt so much. Truth always does. Most people pray for change but curse the ending that brings it. They want transformation without transition, blessings without loss. But it doesn't work that way. You can't move forward holding everything behind you. Something has to die for something else to live. That's the trade. That's the law of growth. You can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you were. Endings are the universe's way of freeing your hands, even if it breaks your heart to let go. You ever notice how night always looks darkest before sunrise? That's because endings and beginnings overlap. You think it's all falling apart, but it's really just shifting. The pain isn't proof of death, it's proof of birth. The old version of you is dissolving, and something new is emerging. That's why it feels chaotic. It's transition disguised as tragedy. The world doesn't end quietly. It ends with thunder, with noise, with storms that shake your soul until you finally stop resisting the change that's been calling you. Endings are divine because they're not your choice, they're higher decisions. You don't control when the story closes, you just decide how you respond. You can cry for the door that's shut or prepare for the one that's opening. But make no mistake, the door opens. It always does. You might not see it yet, but it's there, waiting for you to lift your eyes from what's gone long enough to notice what's next. There's something sacred about losing everything and still believing. It's the kind of faith that moves mountains. The kind that makes heaven pay attention. When you stop fighting the ending and start trusting the purpose, everything changes. You begin to see the pattern, the way destruction always dances with creation, how loss and gain hold hands like old friends. You start realizing that maybe, just maybe, it all had to fall apart for you to finally fall into place. And maybe that's what divine beginnings look like. Messy, painful, confusing, the kind of moments that make you question everything until one day they make you grateful for everything. Because what ends tonight doesn't die. It transforms. It sheds its form, its name, its story, and becomes something new. Endings aren't the end. They're rebirth wearing the mask of loss. And the sooner you see that, the sooner you stop mourning what was and start preparing for what's coming. The trick is to stop asking why it ended and start asking what it's making room for, because life doesn't take without replacing. It never leaves you empty. It just rearranges what you thought you needed. The pain you feel is proof of progress. The silence after the storm is proof that peace is on its way. You're not losing. You're leveling up. And sometimes the only way to rise is to let everything that can't come with you fall away. So when it ends, don't call it over. Call it divine, because endings aren't graves, they're gates. The night isn't darkness. It's a curtain hiding your next act. The story doesn't stop, it shifts. And you, standing in the ashes, aren't finished. You're finally ready. Suffering stops when surrender starts. Sounds strange, doesn't it? Because the world taught you to fight, to push, to claw your way through every ounce of pain until you're too tired to breathe. They told you surrender means giving up, quitting, losing, but what if that's the biggest lie of all? What if the moment you stop trying to control the storm is the moment it finally passes? What if peace doesn't come from force but from release? You've been holding on so tight, trying to fix what was never yours to fix, trying to rewrite what was written in ink, and now your hands are bleeding from gripping too hard onto what was meant to leave. Pain, real pain, doesn't just come from loss, it comes from resistance. It's like trying to swim against the current and wondering why you're drowning. The current isn't your enemy, it's your direction. But you fight it, don't you? Because you think control means strength. You think letting go means weakness. Yet somehow every time you loosen your grip, the world gets quieter, lighter, almost clearer. You start realizing that maybe you weren't supposed to win every fight. Maybe some battles were meant to break your armor, not your soul. You see, suffering thrives in control. It feeds on your need to make sense of what's senseless, to force logic where only faith fits. You keep asking why things happened the way they did, why people left, why doors closed. You search for answers in every silence, but maybe there's no answer to find, only a lesson to feel. Surrender isn't losing hope, it's handing your fight to something bigger than you. It's saying, I don't understand this, but I trust there's a reason. And that trust, that raw, trembling kind of faith, is what ends the suffering you've been carrying. You ever notice how the world gets louder the more you try to control it? Every voice, every doubt, every fear screaming at once. You build walls, you wear masks, you pretend it doesn't hurt. But control doesn't protect you. It isolates you. It makes you a prisoner of your own expectations. You're so focused on how things should be that you miss what they are. You miss the beauty in the chaos, the lesson in the loss, the purpose in the pain. When you finally stop running, you see it. You see how every unanswered prayer was a setup, how every closed door was redirecting you to the right one. Surrender isn't about giving in to pain. It's about no longer letting pain define you. It's about saying, you can stay, but you won't rule me. It's accepting that you can't control how the story unfolds, only how you show up in it. When you let go, the weight doesn't disappear. It shifts. It stops sitting on your chest and starts sitting in your hands, light enough to carry, heavy enough to remind you of what you've learned. And in that moment, you realize peace isn't found when things stop hurting. It's found when you stop needing them to make sense. People think surrender means silence, but it's actually the loudest declaration of strength. It's the sound of your soul saying, I'm done fighting what's already decided. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Because sometimes holding on keeps you stuck, and letting go sets you free. You can spend your life trying to control every outcome, or you can finally trust that maybe, just maybe, everything's already working in your favor, even if it doesn't feel that way right now. You've been through enough nights trying to hold the world together with trembling hands, enough pretending you're fine when everything inside you is breaking, enough trying to control people who were never yours to keep, or outcomes that were never yours to decide. There's peace waiting on the other side of surrender. Not the kind that comes from fixing everything, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to. When you surrender, you stop trying to be your own God. You stop thinking you know better than the plan unfolding. You stop demanding answers and start listening for whispers. That's when clarity finds you, not when you fight the pain, but when you sit with it long enough to understand it. You begin to see how every ending had mercy hidden inside it, how every rejection was really protection. You start realizing that the only thing you were ever meant to control was your reaction, not your reality. The funny thing is, once you let go, life starts moving again. Things you were chasing start finding you. Doors you were knocking on start opening on their own, because surrender aligns you with flow, not force, and flow is where miracles live. The kind of miracles that only appear when you stop trying to make everything perfect and start trusting that it already is in its own chaotic, painful, beautiful way. So maybe suffering never really came from the pain. It came from your refusal to release it. Maybe peace isn't earned through struggle, but found through surrender. And maybe the reason everything feels so heavy right now is because you're still holding what was meant to be handed over. You don't lose control when you surrender. You gain clarity. You don't fall apart. You fall into alignment, because when you stop fighting what's written, you finally start living what's meant. Your strength triggered heaven's decision. It's funny, isn't it? How people think heaven rewards comfort. How they believe blessings come wrapped in ease, in quiet mornings and gentle sunsets. But no, it doesn't work like that. Heaven doesn't move for the soft. It moves for the scarred, for the ones who bled, crawled, and still whispered, "Thank you." You think all that pain was random? You think the nights you cried yourself to sleep went unnoticed? Every tear was seen, every bruise recorded. Because heaven doesn't respond to weakness, it responds to endurance. And you didn't quit when you could have. That's what triggered the shift. That's what made the divine whisper now. Strength isn't about lifting weights or wearing smiles while breaking inside. It's about staying when everything inside you screams to run. It's about walking through fire with your head down and your heart open. The kind of strength that doesn't look pretty. The kind that's quiet, unseen. The kind that lives in the cracks of your voice when you still choose to speak faith over fear. You've been carrying that kind of strength. And you didn't even know it. The world thought you were defeated, but heaven was taking notes. Every time you got back up, something in the unseen realm shifted in your favor. It's strange how the strongest people rarely feel strong. They feel tired, misunderstood, stretched too thin. But strength isn't what you feel. It's what you choose. You didn't collapse when everything else did. You kept showing up. You kept believing in a plan you couldn't see. And that persistence, that stubborn kind of hope, is what gets noticed. It's not the loud victories that move heaven. It's the silent ones, the ones where no one's watching, and you still choose to keep the light on. You were never meant to break, only bend. The storms came to test your foundation, not destroy it. And while others questioned your survival, heaven was already preparing your rise. The delay wasn't punishment, it was recognition. You had to prove your faith wasn't just convenience. You had to show that your belief wasn't built on blessings, but on trust. That's what separates those who talk about strength from those who embody it. You became the kind of soul that could handle what you prayed for. Do you know what happens when heaven sees strength like that? It decides quietly, suddenly, decisively. It shifts the script. The same weight that once tried to crush you becomes the proof of your worth. The same people who doubted you become witnesses to your turnaround. Because heaven doesn't waste strength, it rewards it. It takes your scars and turns them into signatures, proof that you endured what others couldn't. Proof that you're ready for what's next. Every trial was a test of capacity. Every heartbreak stretched your soul wider. Every loss carved room for greater gain. You thought you were breaking, but you were expanding, and heaven saw it. The endurance, the patience, the moments you said, "I trust you," even when nothing made sense. That's what triggered the verdict. The decision wasn't made because you begged for it. It was made because you earned it. Through pain, through perseverance, through silence. Sometimes heaven waits for you to stop trying to prove yourself and just be yourself. That's when it moves. Because it's not about showing how strong you are. It's about revealing who you've become. You've turned pain into purpose without even realizing it. You've carried faith through fire, love through loss, peace through chaos. That's not ordinary strength. That's divine endurance. The kind that doesn't just survive storms, but commands them. You ever wonder why some doors stayed locked for so long? Because your strength wasn't ready yet. You would have walked into blessings unprepared, still wounded, still fragile. Heaven doesn't hand crowns to those who can't carry the weight. It waits until you've been refined, until your heart beats steady in the storm. And now, after everything, your pulse is strong enough to handle what's coming. That's why the decision came now, not before. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. The decision wasn't made in the moment of your success. It was made in the moments no one saw. When you chose faith over fear. When you forgave instead of fighting back, when you smiled through pain and still kept your heart soft, that's what triggered it. Heaven doesn't move for noise, it moves for endurance, for the soul that refuses to give up even when everything says it should. So no, it wasn't luck, it wasn't coincidence, it was the accumulation of every time you stood up again, every time you refused to let darkness win. Strength like that doesn't go unnoticed. It creates ripples in the unseen. It calls heaven to attention. You've become the reason for your own turning point, because strength isn't something you build. It's something you reveal when the world tries to take it from you. And that strength, that quiet fire inside you, is the reason heaven finally said, enough waiting. Darkness always collapses before dawn. You've felt it, haven't you? That unbearable pressure, the kind that makes you think it'll never end. The silence that gets so loud it starts to sound like screaming. The weight that keeps pressing on your chest until breathing feels like work. That's the edge, the breaking point, the moment when everything in you starts to crack. But here's the secret the world doesn't tell you. Darkness doesn't win. It just fights hardest right before it dies. When you're closest to the light, the shadows get desperate. They try to pull you back, whisper that it's over, that you've lost, that there's no reason left to believe. But that voice isn't truth, it's panic, because the darkness knows it's losing you. You think it's coincidence that the hardest battles come right before breakthroughs. No, it's resistance. It's the universe testing how bad you want what you've prayed for. It's life asking, are you ready? Because anyone can have faith when things are easy, but real faith, the kind that moves mountains, only grows in the dark. It's in those moments when you can't see the way forward, when every door's shut and every light's gone out, that your soul learns how to see without eyes. That's when strength isn't a choice anymore, it's survival. You see, dawn doesn't announce itself quietly. It breaks, it rips the sky open and floods everything that once looked hopeless. But before that moment, before that golden light touches the edge of night, everything feels worse. The air feels colder, the silence feels longer. It's like the universe pauses, holding its breath right before it exhales something beautiful. That's where you are. That pause, that tension, the part where everything feels unbearable, not because you're failing, but because you're about to shift. People mistake darkness for endings. They think it means the story's over, the fight's lost. But darkness isn't the end. It's the womb. It's where new versions of you are born. Every heartbreak, every loss, every lonely night. It's all part of the construction. You're being rebuilt quietly in places no one can see. That's why it hurts. Growth always does. The old parts of you are dying, making space for something stronger, wiser, more unbreakable. The irony is the closer you get to dawn, the darker it gets. Because the night doesn't want to let go. It clings. It throws everything it has left. Fear, doubt, exhaustion, trying to convince you to give up. And most do. Most people stop right before the light comes. They turn back, thinking the pain means it's not working. But that pain is proof that it is working. It's proof that something inside you is shifting, breaking through the walls that once held you captive. You can't see it yet, but every tear, every moment of silence, every breath you forced yourself to take, it's all leading somewhere. The darkness doesn't hate you, it fears you. Because once you've learned to survive it, it loses power. Once you've walked through the night and realized you can still stand, still hope, still believe, it can't touch you anymore. You become the kind of person who carries their own dawn inside them, the kind that doesn't wait for light, they create it. That's the moment darkness collapses. When you stop begging for it to leave and start glowing through it anyway. Sometimes the night lasts longer than you thought it would. You start wondering if dawn forgot about you, but it didn't. It's coming at its own pace, not yours. You can't rush light. You can't demand warmth from the sun before it's ready to rise. You just have to hold on through the cold. That's the test. Not how strong you are when everything's bright, but how patient you can be when everything's black. Because anyone can praise the light, but only the chosen learn to trust in the dark. You ever notice how silence before dawn feels different? It's not hopeless. It's waiting. It's calm in disguise. That's the same silence you feel before your breakthrough. It's not emptiness, it's alignment. Everything's moving, shifting, arranging itself for your moment. You can't see it yet, but heaven's already moving pieces in your favor. The night is collapsing, even if it's doing it slowly. You just have to stay still, long enough to let it fall apart. It's always the same story. The caterpillar thinks it's dying in the cocoon, but it's becoming a butterfly. The seed thinks it's being buried, but it's being planted. You think it's the end, but it's the beginning. The dark isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's where power is built, where patience is born, where purpose is refined. The world doesn't teach you that. It tells you to fear the dark, to run from it. But those who understand it, those who sit in it and listen, they find something the rest never will: peace. Because when you finally stop fighting the dark, you start seeing the beauty in it. Darkness always collapses before dawn. It has to. It's the law of balance. Night doesn't last forever because it wasn't designed to, and no matter how endless it feels, it breaks always. You don't have to force it, you just have to endure it. The pain, the silence, the confusion, it's all proof that dawn is closer than it's ever been, and when it finally breaks, you'll understand why it had to be this dark, why it had to be this heavy, and why you had to walk through it alone. Because dawn doesn't find the weak, it finds the warriors who refuse to stop walking through the night. Closure is not loss, it's alignment. People think closure means you move on without pain, that you forget what happened, that you stop caring. But no, that's not closure. That's denial dressed up as healing. Real closure isn't soft, it isn't peaceful at first. It's a storm that rips you open before it rebuilds you. It's when you stop asking why it happened and start accepting that it did. It's not about forgetting. It's about understanding that maybe, just maybe, the ending wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was a correction. You spend so long holding on to things that no longer fit your story. Relationships, memories, versions of yourself that died years ago. You keep feeding ghosts and wonder why you're starving. Because closure isn't about getting answers. It's about realizing you don't need them anymore. You think if they apologized, if they came back, if you understood why it all fell apart, then maybe the pain would fade. But it doesn't work like that. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. From the moment you say, I don't need to know why. I just need to move forward. That's the real freedom. The kind that no apology can give. See, loss is loud. It demands your attention. But alignment is quiet. It whispers in the chaos, gently pulling you toward what's meant for you. Sometimes that means removing people you prayed to keep. Sometimes it means losing opportunities you thought were everything. It feels cruel at first, unfair, even personal, but alignment isn't about comfort. It's about calling. You can't be in alignment and still live in attachment. You can't hold the old and reach for the new at the same time. Something has to fall away, and when it does, it feels like loss. But it's not. It's space. Space for better, space for purpose, space for peace. The truth is, you were never losing. You were being redirected. That person who walked away, that job that didn't work out, that dream that fell apart, it wasn't rejection, it was refinement. You think it ended because something was wrong, but maybe it ended because you were right, just not where you were standing. Alignment is messy like that. It takes things you thought you needed and replaces them with what you actually do. It doesn't ask your permission. It just moves. It pulls you out of what's familiar into what's necessary. That's why closure hurts so much, because it's not just about letting go of people. It's about letting go of versions of yourself that believed they couldn't live without them. Sometimes closure doesn't look like peace. It looks like tears on your pillow, long nights of silence, long drives with no destination. It looks like questioning your worth because something ended without explanation. But the truth is, closure isn't always clear. It's gradual. It unfolds in moments. The first time you don't check their profile. The first time you wake up and they're not the first thought. The first time you smile without pretending. That's closure. Not one big realization, but 1,000 small ones whispering, "You're okay now." You ever wonder why some people leave so suddenly? It's because their part in your story is done. You might not like it, but life writes endings where your heart refuses to. You can't hold people in chapters they've outgrown. They were lessons, not lifetimes. And that's the thing about alignment. It removes what can't go where you're headed. You can fight it, you can try to force it, but eventually you'll see that everything that left for your evolution. The universe doesn't take without purpose. It only rearranges. Closure isn't loss. It's your soul catching up with what your spirit already knows. That not everything meant something, but everything meant something. Every heartbreak taught you how to love deeper. Every disappointment showed you how to trust differently. Every ending pushed you closer to who you're supposed to become. You might not have seen it then, but one day you'll realize none of it was wasted. Every wrong turn, every mistake, every door that slammed, it all lined up perfectly to bring you here. The hardest part of closure is forgiving yourself for staying too long, for not seeing the signs, for trying to fix what wasn't yours to fix. But forgiveness is part of alignment too, because you can't step into the next chapter while hating the version of yourself that lived in the last one. You have to look at your past, not with regret, but with gratitude. It got you here. It grew you. It built the strength you carry now. That's not loss. That's direction. You can't force closure. It happens when you finally stop chasing explanations and start trusting timing. When you realize that, sometimes, unanswered questions are the answer. When you stop needing them to come back and start thanking them for leaving. Because every person, every heartbreak, every closed door, it all played its part in aligning you with where you're supposed to be. You may not see the full picture yet, but one day you'll look back and laugh at how you begged for what wasn't meant for you. Closure isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of clarity. It's the moment you realize that you didn't lose them. You found yourself. It's the shift from asking why me to whispering thank you. Because everything that left was only making space for what's coming. And when you finally understand that, you stop chasing closure and start living it. Tonight marks the rebirth of your purpose. Funny how the word rebirth sounds beautiful, but the process never is. Everyone loves the idea of transformation until it starts tearing apart everything they thought they were. You don't wake up one day glowing and whole. No, rebirth begins with ruin. It starts when life drags you face first into the dirt, when everything you built starts crumbling, when you can't recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. That's where it begins, in the chaos, in the confusion, in the collapse of the old you. Because purpose doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in loss and silence, in the places that make you question if you'll ever find your way again. You ever notice how life breaks you before it blesses you? It takes everything familiar, everything safe, and replaces it with uncertainty, not to punish you, but to pull you out of pretending. You were never meant to live half awake, doing things that didn't set your soul on fire. But you got used to it, didn't you? You got used to surviving instead of living. So life decided to intervene. It stripped away your distractions, your plans, your illusions of control. It forced you to sit in your own stillness until you remembered who you are. That's not destruction. That's redesign. Rebirth doesn't happen in light. It happens in darkness, like a seed buried underground. Everything looks dead on the surface, but something's happening beneath it. The breaking isn't the end, it's the beginning. The pain you feel right now is proof that something new is being born. Your old purpose, built on pleasing, proving, surviving, had to die so your true one could live. That's why everything feels so heavy, so uncertain. You're not being punished, you're being rewritten. People talk about purpose like it's a destination, like one day you'll arrive and everything will make sense. But purpose isn't found, it's remembered. It's been there all along, buried under fear, under expectation, under noise, and life. Life has a funny way of stripping all that away until all that's left is you. Raw, bruised, honest. That's when it hits. That moment when you realize all the pain, all the loss, all the endings, they weren't random. They were realignment. They were making space for who you were always meant to be. You don't find purpose in the light. It finds you in the dark. When you're tired of pretending. When you're done chasing what doesn't feed your soul. When you've lost everything and have nothing left to hide behind. That's when it appears. Quietly. Not with fireworks, not with clarity, but with a whisper, a small, steady voice that says, "You're not done yet." That voice doesn't speak to your ego. It speaks to your essence. It doesn't tell you what to do. It reminds you who you are. Rebirth demands honesty. You can't carry lies into a new life. You can't build a future on foundations that cracked under pressure. That's why everything had to fall apart. That's why people left. That's why things didn't work. You can't rise with dead weight tied to your feet. You had to be stripped down to your soul so the next version of you could be built clean, unfiltered, and free. It's brutal, but it's sacred. Because when everything else is gone, you finally see what's real. There's a point in the process where it feels like nothing's working, like you've lost direction, like you've wasted years chasing something that never existed. But that's not wasted time, it's preparation. You were learning strength, resilience, discernment. You were learning how to trust. The unseen, the old you needed to fall so the real you could stand. You had to experience death in pieces before you could understand life in full. Rebirth isn't loud, it's quiet. It doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens in the moments no one sees. When you choose peace over chaos. When you forgive someone who will never say sorry. When you stop running from pain and start walking through it, every small act of courage, every quiet decision to keep going, that's rebirth. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you to be someone else. You've been through enough endings to earn this beginning. You've bled, you've broken, you've rebuilt yourself from ashes more times than you can count. And every single time, you came back stronger, sharper, more aware. That's no accident. That's transformation. That's the divine saying, now you understand. Because purpose doesn't come to the comfortable, it comes to the chosen, and you've proven you're one of them. Tonight isn't about endings. It's about awakening, the moment when you stop mourning what was and start honoring what's next. You've been through fire, through silence, through loneliness. And yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still believing. That's not weakness, that's resurrection. Because the version of you that's emerging tonight isn't broken, it's reborn. The kind of soul that no longer chases purpose, but embodies it. The kind that doesn't need validation, doesn't beg for signs, doesn't fear endings, because it finally understands they were never endings at all. Just beginnings wearing different faces. You ever notice how quiet it gets right before everything changes? That silence that crawls under your skin makes your heart beat just a little louder, like it knows something you don't. People call it luck, fate, coincidence. But no, this is different. You've been through the fire, haven't you? The kind that burns everything except your will. You've been tested, broken, mocked, left behind. And now, when you least expect it, the whisper comes, you won. Not because the world finally played fair, but because every loss was part of the setup. Every scar was proof you stayed in the game. And somewhere, beyond the noise, beyond the chaos, a voice decided your fight was over. Every battle, every single one, was never random. People like to think they're victims of circumstance, tossed around by fate, punished by life. But no, that's too easy, too shallow. Every battle you faced was building something in you that peace never could. You think it was just pain, disappointment, chaos. But those moments were construction sites. Every tear, every sleepless night, every betrayal was a brick, a lesson, a chisel shaping you into something unbreakable. You don't see it when you're in it, do you? No, you're too busy bleeding, too busy fighting to realize the fight itself is your training ground. You see, strength doesn't come from comfort. It comes from collision, from standing in the middle of storms that were meant to drown you and realizing you can swim. Every setback, every heartbreak, every loss, none of it was wasted. The world doesn't give you easy victories. It breaks you first, tests your patience, questions your faith, strips away your pride, and then watches what's left. That's where your real power is born, in the rubble, in the aftermath, in the quiet moments when you choose to rise even though no one's watching. Most people curse their battles. They call them bad luck, unfair tests, divine punishment. But what if those battles were the very reason you're still standing? What if the chaos was the curriculum? You didn't lose those fights, you learned them. Every time you were pushed to your breaking point, you discovered you could go further. Every time someone tried to bury you, you grew roots. The world has a funny way of disguising preparation as punishment. The ones who don't understand that spend their lives running from the very things that were meant to make them unstoppable. You ever notice how warriors are never calm during training? They scream, they bleed, they fall, they curse the pain, and yet, when the real battle comes, they move like water, focused, fearless, prepared. That's you. You've been training all along, not for survival, but for victory. Those fights you thought were breaking you were sharpening you. The people who betrayed you taught you discernment. The nights you cried alone taught you resilience. The times you failed taught you humility. Every battle you faced added another weapon to your arsenal. You didn't lose, you evolved. There's a cruel beauty in it, isn't there? The idea that pain is the architect of strength. That suffering, as unbearable as it feels, is actually sculpting you into someone who can carry greatness. Everyone wants the glory, but no one wants the grind. They want to win without the war, shine without the shadow, celebrate without the scars. But the universe doesn't work that way. It won't hand you the crown until you've proven you can handle the weight. Every battle you've endured wasn't random. It was a test of endurance, a purification, a process of elimination to see who you really are when the world takes everything away. You see, the truth is, not every fight was meant to destroy you. Some were meant to reveal you, to show you your power, your purpose, your divine design. The world doesn't hand out victory to the lucky. It hands it to the ones who stayed when others ran, the ones who stood when everything told them to fall. Every no, every not yet, every failure was a stepping stone, not a stop sign. You think you were losing, but the scoreboard was being rewritten the entire time. The battle wasn't about proving something to others, it was about proving something to yourself. And the best part? The ones who hurt you, the ones who doubted you, the ones who thought you wouldn't make it, they were part of the plan too. They played their roles perfectly. They pushed you into the fire, and in that fire, you forged your edge. Without them, you wouldn't have discovered what you're capable of. Every battle was a setup, every loss a clue, every scar a prophecy, because it was never about how fast you got there. It was about what you became on the way. The irony of it all is that victory rarely looks like winning at first. It looks like isolation, exhaustion, silence. It looks like everything's falling apart. But that's when it's forming. That's when you're being refined, stretched, built into the version of yourself that can carry the blessing waiting on the other side. The victory doesn't come after the battle. It's inside the battle. Every time you refused to give up, you were winning. Every time you stood your ground, you were rewriting your story. Every battle was not punishment, it was preparation. The pain was proof you were getting closer to your purpose, and every scar was a reminder that you survived what was designed to stop you, which means you already won delays. People hate them. They think waiting means losing. They see time passing in panic, as if every second that doesn't bring what they want is proof that they've been forgotten. But no, that's the illusion. Delays don't mean denial. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. The space between desire and fulfillment isn't empty, it's sacred. It's where the shaping happens. It's where the unseen hands are still arranging the pieces, still testing your patience, still teaching you what to do once the thing you prayed for finally arrives. You see, everyone wants it now. The success, the healing, the reward, the recognition. They want the harvest without planting the seeds, the crown without carrying the cross, the light without standing in the dark. But time doesn't bend to impatience. The universe doesn't rush perfection. Sometimes the delay is protection. Sometimes the reason it hasn't come yet is because if it did, you'd break under the weight of it. The waiting isn't punishment, it's preparation. Most people don't get that. They see delay and call it rejection. They curse the silence, question their worth, and start chasing quick fixes just to quiet the noise of not knowing. But the truth is, delay exposes what's inside you. It reveals your discipline, your faith, your ability to stay grounded when nothing around you makes sense. Anyone can. Smile when things are easy, but can you still stand tall when it feels like everything's stuck? That's the real test. That's when character is built, when patience becomes power, when trust becomes armor. Delays strip away illusions. They teach you what's real. They reveal whether you're chasing validation or purpose, because when you can't see results, all that's left is your belief. And belief is fragile until it's tested. The ones who crumble during waiting were never rooted. They were renting hope. But the ones who endure, who keep moving, who keep believing, even when it hurts, they're the ones being forged for something greater. They're the ones who realize that delay isn't a no, it's a not yet. And not yet is a sacred phrase. It means the story's still being written. You ever notice how the best things always take time? A storm doesn't form in a second. A masterpiece isn't painted in one stroke. Even stars take years to be seen. They're light traveling across endless darkness just to reach you. And yet, we expect our breakthroughs to appear instantly, as if we've earned them simply by wanting them enough. That's not how it works. The delay is part of the design. It teaches timing, balance, endurance. It makes sure that when the door opens, you're ready to walk through it without collapsing. The funny thing is, you never really appreciate the waiting until it's over. Once the thing arrives, you look back and realize the delay made it sweeter. The lessons learned in silence gave you depth. The frustration gave you gratitude. The long nights taught you that peace isn't in the result, it's in the resilience. Every delay carved something out of you, something essential, something permanent. You think you were waiting for a blessing, but the blessing was waiting for you to mature into the person who could handle it. People often mistake movement for progress. They panic when life slows down, thinking stillness means failure. But real progress often happens in silence, in stillness, in seasons where nothing seems to move. That's when the roots grow. That's when the unseen growth begins. Trees don't sprout the day they're planted. They spend time in the dark, in the dirt, hidden, unseen. That's what delays are, your root season. hidden growth, strengthening beneath the surface. You're not being forgotten, you're being fortified. And here's the secret: delays separate the desperate from the destined. The desperate give up when it takes too long. The destined stay. They adapt, they learn, they evolve. Because they know time is not their enemy, it's their ally. Every delay builds patience. Every wait sharpens focus. Every moment of silence teaches you to hear the faint whispers of purpose that rush can never reveal. The world loves speed, but destiny moves slow. It takes its time, like a sculptor chiseling every detail, making sure the final form can withstand the pressure of the spotlight. You might think it's unfair, that it's taking too long, that maybe you missed your chance, but no, the chance is waiting for you. The moment is reserved for when you've learned enough, healed enough, grown enough. The delay isn't about withholding, it's about aligning. The right thing at the wrong time can still destroy you. That's why the delay exists, to make sure that when the right time comes, you don't just receive it, you keep it. So the next time life slows down, the next time it feels like you've been forgotten, remember, nothing real comes easy, and nothing divine arrives early. The delay is proof that it's being built right. Because when it finally arrives, it won't be fragile, it won't fade, it won't fall apart. It'll fit perfectly, like it was always meant for you, because it was. Every delay has a cost. Every hesitation, every maybe tomorrow, every time you let fear whisper louder than purpose, something slips away. You don't see it immediately, of course. Time doesn't scream when it's wasted. It just disappears quietly, second by second, smile by smile, dream by dream. You tell yourself you're just waiting for the right moment, but deep down, you know the truth. The moment is already here, and you're just too afraid to grab it. Fear disguises itself as logic, as caution, as patience. It tells you to wait for signs, to wait for proof, but proof only shows up after action. You lose more by waiting than you ever could by failing. See, people love comfort. They love the illusion of safety. They cling to it like it can save them, not realizing it's the same thing that's choking their potential. Every time you postpone your purpose, something inside you weakens. Dreams don't die all at once, they fade. A little compromise here, a little excuse there, and before you know it, you've built a cage out of your own hesitation. You call it stability, but really, it's just a slow death disguised as peace. The world doesn't wait for anyone. Opportunities don't send reminders. When you hesitate, they move on to someone else, someone bold enough to act. That's the cost of delay. You don't just lose time, you lose alignment. You lose the moment where everything was ready for you, where the stars quietly lined up, waiting for your yes. The universe rewards movement, not waiting. You were never meant to pause your purpose until you felt comfortable. Growth doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes through friction, risk, uncertainty. People say, I'll start when I'm ready. But what does ready even mean? It's a myth, a trick your mind plays to keep you safe, small, predictable. You're never fully ready. You just decide. That's it. You step in, you stumble, you learn, you adjust. Every success story started with someone who didn't feel ready but refused to wait any longer. Every delay has a cost, and the longer you wait, the heavier it gets. The cost doesn't just live in time, it lives in regret. Regret is a slow poison. It doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in when you see someone else living the life you talked about, when you realize that thing you were scared to try could have worked if you'd just moved sooner. It shows up in those quiet moments when you can't lie to yourself anymore. You start wondering what could have been, and that's the cruelest question in the world because there's no answer that satisfies it. Action, even messy, imperfect, reckless action, is better than standing still. Because motion brings clarity. You can adjust a moving ship. You can't steer one that's anchored in fear. You're not losing because you failed. You're losing because you never started. People think waiting keeps them safe. But the truth is, waiting steals more than failure ever could. At least failure teaches. Waiting just numbs. The cost of delay isn't always obvious. It's not always about missing a job, a chance, or a person. Sometimes it's about the version of you that never got to exist because you didn't move. The fearless version, the one who believed, who tried, who dared. Every time you say, "not yet," you bury that version a little deeper. And one day, you wake up surrounded by all the things you thought you wanted, and yet it feels empty because you know you settled. You traded purpose for predictability, fire for comfort. You ever notice how children don't wait? They see something, they move, they fall, they cry, they get up again. Somewhere along the way, we unlearn that courage. We start believing the lie that safety equals success. But the truth? The safest thing you can do is take risks, because at least you'll be alive while you're doing it. Delay keeps you breathing, but not living. It makes you careful when you should be bold, quiet when you should roar. Every delay has a cost, and it always demands payment. It'll take your time, your confidence, your faith. It'll eat away at your passion until all that's left is routine, the kind that feels like existing but not living. And when you finally realize it, when you look back, you'll see that the things you feared losing weren't even worth the time you gave them. You were holding on to comfort while letting go of destiny. That's the cruel trick, thinking you can wait your way into greatness. You can't. Greatness doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who move, even when they don't know where the road leads. The cost of delay isn't paid in money, it's paid in moments. Moments that could have changed everything. Moments that had your name written all over them, but slipped away because you thought you had time. You never have time. Time is the one thing that doesn't stop for anyone. It's either your partner or your enemy, depending on whether you move with it or against it. And the longer you hesitate, the louder it laughs, because time doesn't pity hesitation. It just passes, leaving behind the people who thought they could wait forever. Momentum builds before miracles. That's the part most people miss. They pray, they wish, they cry out for a miracle. But when life starts shaking, when everything begins to move and twist and turn, they panic. They think it's chaos. But no, that's momentum. That's the storm before the calm. The world doesn't deliver miracles wrapped in peace. It delivers them disguised as movement, confusion, disruption. You don't get magic standing still. The spark comes when motion begins. You ever try pushing something heavy? At first, it doesn't budge. You lean in, you strain, you sweat, and it still feels impossible. But the moment it starts to move just an inch, everything changes. That's momentum. It's the shift that says, keep going, you're close. But most people quit right before that inch. They stop because it feels too hard, too slow, too pointless. They think nothing's happening, when in reality, everything is. Momentum is invisible at first. It's quiet, almost mocking, like the universe testing if you really want what you asked for. See, everyone wants the miracle, but no one wants the momentum, because momentum isn't pretty. It's messy, unpredictable, uncomfortable. It demands action, consistency, faith without sight. It asks you to move even when the ground beneath you feels unstable. But that's where the miracle brews in the movement, not the waiting. People pray for open doors, but when one starts to creak open, they freeze, too afraid to walk through it. They forget that the door doesn't swing wide until you start pushing. Momentum is spiritual proof that something is shifting. It's the build-up before the breakthrough, the heartbeat before the birth. It's that restless energy you feel when you're close, but can't see it yet. That's not anxiety, that's divine tension. It's the universe stretching you to handle what's coming. You can't receive a miracle you're not strong enough to carry. So it builds your endurance through motion, through trials, through the little signs you almost ignore. People think miracles just appear, like lightning. No, lightning doesn't strike out of nowhere. It builds up charge, slowly, silently, gathering power until it explodes. That's what momentum does. It gathers energy, direction, focus, until the release becomes unstoppable. But if you quit while it's building, you'll never see the strike. You'll stand there in the rain, wondering why nothing happened, not realizing the miracle was seconds away, waiting for one more push. Momentum isn't glamorous. It's the repetition of small, boring, painful steps. It's doing what you said you'd do, long after the excitement fades. It's faith in motion, and that's the difference. Faith moves. It doesn't sit around waiting for a sign. It, asterisk, is times the sign. When you keep going despite the resistance, that's when the energy begins to shift. That's when doors start unlocking. People start showing up. Opportunities start aligning. Not because they magically appeared, but because your movement created a frequency that called them in. Miracles don't meet you at the starting line. They meet you mid-run, when your breath is short and your legs ache. That's when the breakthrough shows up, like it was waiting for proof that you wouldn't stop. The universe doesn't hand out miracles to the idle. It rewards those who move with intent, even through confusion. Movement is faith's language. Every step forward, no matter how small, whispers, "I still believe." And belief like that, it bends reality. Momentum is dangerous to doubt. It scares fear away. Once you get it going, it's hard to stop. That's why the hardest part is the beginning, the push from stillness to motion. That's where most people break. They want to see results first, but momentum doesn't work that way. You move first, then the results chase you. The shift starts inside you long before it shows outside. But once it does, everything accelerates. What took years suddenly happens in days. What once resisted now flows, because momentum compounds. It multiplies every effort, every seed planted, every tear shed. You ever notice how storms don't start with thunder, they start with pressure? That's momentum too. The pressure builds, the winds rise, and then, to release. You can't get the rain without the rumble. Life works the same way. The moments you call chaos are often just the build-up before your breakthrough. But you have to stay steady long enough to see it unfold. Momentum only rewards those who endure the noise. And maybe that's the real test, whether you can keep moving when it looks like nothing's working. Whether you can trust that the small steps, the unseen progress, the repetition that feels pointless, are actually building something unstoppable. Because that's what momentum does. It hides progress in motion, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal it. One day, all the pushing, all the grinding, all the waiting will collide into something breathtaking. Not by accident, not by luck, but because you kept the wheel turning when everyone else gave up. Miracles aren't born out of magic, they're born out of movement. You don't chase them. You build the road that brings them to you. And the road is built one stubborn step at a time. Momentum doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for persistence. It asks if you're willing to move before you see the finish line, to believe that something greater is already forming behind the curtain. Because once you start moving with that kind of conviction, the miracle has no choice but to meet you halfway. Discipline separates dreamers from doers. Everyone loves to talk about dreams, big, wild, impossible dreams. The kind that make people nod, smile, and say someday. But someday never comes for most people, because dreaming is easy. It feels good. It tricks the mind into thinking progress is being made. You close your eyes, picture the life you want, the success, the peace, the applause, and for a moment it feels real. But then the dream ends, the alarm rings, and reality asks the question that kills most fantasies. What are you going to do about it? That's where discipline walks in, and that's where most walk out. Dreamers love feelings. Doers love follow-through. A dreamer waits for the perfect mood, the right energy, the divine sign that says, now. But a doer? They move even when it hurts, even when it's boring, even when no one is watching. Discipline is quiet, unglamorous, uncelebrated. It's not fireworks, it's footsteps. The steady rhythm of someone who decided that their purpose is louder than their excuses. It's not about passion, it's about persistence. Passion gets you started. Discipline keeps you standing. You see, people worship motivation like it's a miracle drug. They scroll through speeches, quotes, clips, chasing that little spark. But sparks die without wood. Discipline is the wood it keeps the fire alive when motivation runs out. Because motivation is emotional. Discipline is mechanical. You don't wait to feel it, you just do it. That's the difference between wanting a miracle and becoming one. Dreamers talk about how they want to change the world, but they can't even change their habits. They say they're waiting for the right time, but time doesn't wait for them. Doers know the secret. There is no right time, only right now. They act while others analyze. They build while others brag. They fail forward while others fear falling. That's discipline. It replaces drama with direction. Discipline doesn't care about how you feel today. It doesn't need your mood's permission. It's the voice that whispers, "Get up," when your body says, "Stay down." It's the force that drags you through the mud, the weight that keeps you grounded when the world tempts you to drift. Discipline doesn't clap for you, doesn't comfort you, doesn't care about your comfort. It's ruthless, but it's honest. It won't lie to you like motivation does. It'll tell you the truth: you can't get what you want if you won't do what's required. You ever notice how people envy the successful but never study their structure? They see the outcome, not the grind. They want the shine but not the schedule. Every victory has a pattern behind it: early mornings, late nights, sacrifices nobody applauds. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's gritty. It's the repetition of the same small things, done over and over, until they build a wall strong enough to stand on. That's how miracles are built in the ordinary, not the extraordinary. Dreamers romanticize the goal. Doers respect the grind. The dreamer sees the mountain and talks about the view. The doer starts climbing, step by step, mistake by mistake, pain by pain. Because discipline doesn't crave perfection, it craves progress. It's not about doing everything right. It's about showing up when everything feels wrong. That's the secret the world doesn't tell you. Consistency beats talent every time. Discipline hurts before it heals. It strips away the laziness, the lies, the ego. It exposes your weaknesses, your patterns, your excuses. It shows you who you really are when comfort is gone. Most people can't handle that kind of truth. They hide behind potential, behind one day. But the doers, they burn the excuses. They'd rather suffer now than live with regret later. Because regret, that's the cruelest punishment. It's a lifetime of knowing you could have but didn't. Discipline doesn't demand perfection, but it demands honesty. You can't fake effort. The mirror knows. Your results know. The clock knows. Every skipped day, every broken promise, it all adds up. The world doesn't owe you success because you want it. It gives it to the ones who worked while everyone else was wishing. That's the harsh beauty of discipline. It's fair. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, or what you've lost. It only cares if you show up. And the strange part? The longer you walk with discipline, the quieter it becomes. At first, it's a fight. Then, it's a rhythm. Then, it's a way of breathing. You stop needing to force it because it becomes part of you. It rewires you. You stop chasing motivation because you become the source of your own fire. That's when you realize discipline wasn't punishment, it was freedom. The freedom to create, to control, to conquer. Dreamers wait for luck. Doers build momentum. Dreamers hope. Doers act. And somewhere along the line, the world stops calling the doer lucky and starts calling them unstoppable. Because discipline doesn't just separate dreamers from doers, it turns the doers into leaders, the consistent into conquerors. Not because they had more talent, but because they had more grit. They understood the one truth everyone runs from. Feelings fade, but discipline endures.